Hey Army, it's me, Taehyung. I've been thinking a lot lately, and tonight I just want to talk to you honestly, from my heart. No script, no filter, just me, sharing my story with you. I never thought I'd sit down one day and talk about something like this. For years, I've tried to protect not just myself, but all of us, our bond, our memories, our image as brothers. BTS has always been more than just a group to me. It's been my entire life, my home, my family. But sometimes, even in the closest family, things get complicated. And sometimes silence becomes too heavy to carry. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was filled with noise even though the world outside was quiet. I opened my phone, scrolled through old photos, old memories of laughter and sweat from the practice rooms. And all I could think was, when did we start drifting apart? When did that warmth turn into something that made me afraid to speak? I know Army always sees us smiling, playing around, calling each other brothers. And that's real. It's not fake, but behind that, there are moments no one ever sees. Moments when pride gets in the way. When misunderstandings grow like cracks in glass, you don't notice at first, but one day you wake up and realize something broke. I had been keeping a lot to myself. I'm not someone who likes to fight or speak harshly. I always believed that love means patience, that you should understand people even when it hurts. But over time, patience started to feel like punishment. I would sit in the studio trying to record, trying to focus, but one voice in my head kept asking, why did he do that to me? I won't lie, what happened wasn't small. It wasn't a random argument or a creative disagreement. It was something that shook me deeply because it came from someone I trusted the most. A person I believed would always have my back. That's why when it happened, I didn't even get angry. I just froze. Because betrayal doesn't always scream, it whispers quietly enough to hurt forever. People think idols fight about songs or schedules, but the truth is, it's rarely about those things. It's about respect, about honesty, about knowing that behind the lights and applause, we still see each other as human beings. I felt like for a while I was being treated as a product, not a person, and what hurt the most was realizing that one of my own members, someone I loved like family, saw me that way too. I remember that night clearly. We were in the practice room. The air was thick with tension. No music, no laughter, just silence. I could feel the distance between us even when we were standing only a few feet apart. He wouldn't look at me, and I didn't know how to start the conversation. Then he said something calm but sharp. You think you're the only one hurting? That line, it cut through me like glass. Because he wasn't wrong, but the way he said it, it carried all the weight of months of silence and pride. I wanted to scream, to ask why, but the words just wouldn't come out. My throat tightened. My chest hurt. I turned away, pretending to check something on my phone, but deep down I was breaking. You know, when you've shared everything dreams, struggles, success with someone, confrontation feels like betrayal. It's like the world you built together is being torn apart right in front of your eyes. I tried to hold it together. I tried to be the calm one, the peacemaker, but I think I was just scared. Scared that if I spoke, I'd lose everything. That night, after the confrontation, I walked back to my dorm and sat on the floor in the dark. No music, no noise, just me and my thoughts. I kept replaying every word he said, every look, every silence between us. My phone kept buzzing messages, calls, schedules, but I ignored everything. I just needed to breathe. The next morning, the world was already talking. Someone had leaked part of our argument. I still don't know who. Maybe it was Steph, maybe someone else. But once it was out, there was no turning back. Suddenly, our private pain became public property. The words Taehyung and betrayal were trending. Thousands of messages flooded my inbox, some defending me, others attacking me. Armies arguing with each other, the media twisting every line. I just sat there watching the chaos unfold. I wanted to scream, "Please stop guessing. You don't know everything." But what could I say? If I spoke, I'd only make it worse. So I stayed silent. People think silence means guilt, but sometimes it means exhaustion. I was tired of pretending that everything was okay, tired of smiling when my heart was bleeding. HYBE called me the next day. They wanted to clarify the situation. That's what they always say. I knew what that meant. Statements, scripts, damage control. But how do you clarify something that broke inside you? They said, just say it was a misunderstanding, that you and the member are fine. I nodded, but I couldn't do it because I wasn't fine. That's when I realized if I didn't speak my truth, someone else would speak it for me. And they twisted until I didn't even recognize my own story anymore. I didn't want to be another version of myself controlled by headlines. So I made the decision to talk, not to expose, not to accuse, but to breathe, to tell my story in my own words before it got buried under noise. When I finally went live, I didn't plan it, I didn't write anything, I just pressed the button. My heart was racing, my hands were shaking. I looked at the screen, saw thousands of hearts and comments flooding in, and for a second, I almost ended it. But then I thought of all the years Army has been with me, how they've seen me laugh and cry, and I whispered, maybe you deserve to hear this from me. And that's how it started. The confession that would change everything. When I pressed that button to go live, I didn't expect millions of people to join within seconds. I just wanted to speak not as an idol, not as a member of BTS, but as Kim Taehyung, a man who was hurting, who needed to be honest. The chat was flying so fast I could barely read the words, but I saw a few that made my heart stop. Are you okay, Tae? Please tell us what really happened. Don't cry. Those simple words, they gave me strength. I remember taking a deep breath before saying the first sentence. My voice was trembling, my throat felt dry, but somehow the words started to flow on their own. I said, you know, being part of BTS has been the most beautiful thing in my life, but lately, it's also been the hardest. The room went quiet even though I was alone. It's strange how silence feels heavy when millions of people are listening. I continued, slowly, carefully, choosing every word. There's something that happened between me and one of the members. I'm not here to blame anyone. I'm just here to tell you how I felt. I could feel my heart pounding as I said those words. Because in this industry, honesty can destroy you. People love truth until it makes them uncomfortable. But I didn't care anymore. I wanted peace. I told them how the confrontation started. It wasn't a fight, it was a buildup of months of misunderstanding. We had been working nonstop, schedules overlapping, emotions buried under exhaustion. Every time we tried to talk, it turned into small arguments. Not because we hated each other, but because we were too tired to understand. One night, after a long rehearsal, I overheard something, a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. He was talking to another person, someone close to the company. I heard my name. I heard words like lazy, distracted, not committed anymore. My chest tightened because those weren't just random words, they were judgments from someone who was supposed to know me better than anyone else. I didn't confront him right away. I just kept it inside, hoping maybe I misunderstood. I told myself, he didn't mean it, he's just stressed. But the next day, his attitude changed. He stopped making eye contact. He spoke to me only when necessary. It was like something invisible had built a wall between us. You know what's painful? Pretending everything's fine on stage. Smiling, joking, while your heart feels like it's falling apart. Every concert, every interview, I could feel that distance like a wound that wouldn't heal. Sometimes I caught him looking at me, and for a second I thought he'd say something, but he never did. Then came the night of the confrontation. It wasn't planned, it just happened. We were in the studio finishing a track, and he suddenly said, "Do you even care about this group anymore?" At that moment, I froze. I felt anger, sadness, and confusion all crashing at once. I said, "How could you say that? You know how much this means to me." But he didn't stop. He said, "Then act like it." Those words burned because I had been giving everything, my time, my voice, my health, but he didn't see it. He only saw what I failed to do, not what I was carrying inside. I didn't shout back. I just stood there, breathing hard, trying to keep my tears from falling. The room was cold, but my hands were shaking from heat from the anger I couldn't express. I looked at him and said quietly, "You don't know how much I've been hurting." He didn't answer. He just looked away. That silence, it said everything. After that, we didn't talk for days. We went through interviews, rehearsals, even performances, pretending nothing happened. Army cheered, cameras flashed, and yet between songs, there was a space, an invisible gap that everyone could feel but no one could see. Then, one morning, I saw the headlines. Tension among BTS members, rumors of internal conflict. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Friends, family, even staff were asking questions. The company called an emergency meeting. They told us to deny everything, to smile, to say, "We're closer than ever." But I couldn't smile, not genuinely, because something inside me broke that night. And when something breaks between people who used to love each other, no statement can fix it. I remember lying in bed, scrolling through messages from fans, some crying, some angry, some defending me fiercely, and for the first time I felt guilt because I realized that my silence had turned into a storm. Armies were fighting among themselves, trying to figure out who the member was. I wanted to protect him, but I also wanted to protect myself. How do you choose between the two? That's when I said on the live, "Please don't guess. Please don't send hate to anyone. Just listen." My voice cracked when I said that because I meant it. No matter what happened between us, I never wanted hate to replace love. After the live ended, I sat there in silence for a long time. The comments were still flooding in. People were saying things like, "We love you, Tai. Stay strong. We'll wait for your healing." And I cried, not because I was weak, but because I finally felt seen not as an idol, but as a person. But I also knew that once you open a door like that, you can't close it again. The next morning, my manager called and said, "Taehyung, you started a storm. Hype wanted to take down the live. They said it could affect the brand." I laughed bitterly. "Brand? What about my heart?" I told them. I didn't say anything bad, I just told the truth. They didn't argue, but I could hear the disappointment in their voice. I think they were scared not of me, but of honesty. Because truth doesn't fit into contracts or marketing plans. The member texted me later that day, just 2 words. "We need to talk." I stared at that message for a long time. My hands were shaking again. I didn't know what to expect. Apology, anger, more misunderstanding, but I replied, "Okay." We agreed to meet that night in the studio again, the same place where everything broke. When I walked in, the room felt heavy with memories. He was already there, sitting with his hoodie up, staring at the floor. For a moment, I just stood at the door, unsure if I should go closer. He looked up, his eyes tired, and said, "You shouldn't have gone live." I wanted to say, "You shouldn't have hurt me first." But instead, I whispered, "I had to." That conversation would change everything again. The door closed behind me, and the soft click felt louder than any shout. I could hear the faint hum of the studio lights, the quiet breathing between us, the sound of two hearts that didn't know how to beat in the same rhythm anymore. He was still looking down, fingers tapping against his knee. I stayed standing. I didn't want to sit until I knew what this moment would be, peace or another wound. He said again, a little louder, "You shouldn't have gone live." His tone wasn't angry this time. It was tired, cracked around the edges, like someone who hadn't slept in days. "I know," I answered, "but I also know I couldn't keep pretending." He sighed, rubbing his face with both hands. "Do you have any idea how much trouble that caused?" Hype's panicking. The members are worried. Everyone's calling me asking what happened. I wanted to feel guilty, but I didn't. "Do you have any idea," I said quietly, "how long I've been holding this inside?" That silenced him. For the first time in months, he looked straight at me. His eyes were glassy, uncertain. "So what is it then? You think I betrayed you?" I hesitated. My throat tightened again. "I think you forgot who I am." The words hung in the air like smoke. He blinked, confused. I continued. "You used to see me as your brother. Lately, you talk to me like I'm your rival. And maybe that's my fault too. Maybe I became distant first. But when I heard what you said that night, those words about me being lazy, I felt like everything we built just disappeared." He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. He just nodded slowly, like someone replaying every mistake they've made. "I was angry," he whispered, "not at you. At everything. I said things I didn't mean." "That's the problem," I said. "None of us ever mean it until it's too late." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he stood and walked toward the piano in the corner. He pressed a single note, soft, shaky, but familiar. It was the key of F major, the same note that starts one of our old songs, the one about never letting go. My chest tightened. You remember this? He asked. I nodded. How could I forget? We wrote it together. He smiled faintly, then sat down. I listened to it last night, he said. I realized we haven't written something honest in a long time. Everything's been about the next comeback, the next chart, the next brand. I miss when it was just about us. That was when something inside me softened, because beneath all the layers of pride, schedules, and exhaustion, there it was the same heart that once dreamed beside me in that tiny practice room. I sat beside him. Do you think we can ever go back? He didn't answer right away. He kept playing that one note again and again, like a heartbeat trying to find rhythm. I don't know, he finally said, but I don't want to lose you. I looked down at my hands, then at the keys. Then stop seeing me as someone you have to compete with. I'm not here to outshine you. I'm here because I still believe in us. He turned, eyes wet. You really mean that? I wouldn't be here if I didn't. We sat there for a long time, no words, just quiet music filling the space where pain used to be. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the beginning of it. Later that night, the other members came to the studio. None of them said much. They just listened as we told them everything, the misunderstanding, the rumors, the exhaustion. No yelling, no blaming, just truth. I saw relief in their faces, even tears in some eyes. It reminded me why we started this journey together, not for fame, but for connection. Namjoon put his hand on my shoulder and said, You did the right thing, Tae. Sometimes honesty hurts first before it heals. Those words stuck with me because that's exactly how it felt, like an open wound finally starting to close. After everyone left, I stayed behind, watching the lights of Seoul from the studio window. The city looked peaceful from up there, but I knew how much noise existed beneath that calm. Fame looks beautiful from the outside, but it's built on sleepless nights, misunderstandings, and hearts that sometimes forget how to rest. My phone buzzed again, hundreds of messages, headlines, speculations. I didn't open them. For once, I didn't care. I just wanted to feel the quiet, the realness of that moment. I whispered to myself, I hope Army understands. Because at the end of the day, everything I said, every confession, wasn't for pity, it was for clarity. For years, I'd been hiding behind smiles, thinking vulnerability would make me look weak. But now, I know it's what makes us human. The next few days were chaos again. News outlets twisted my words, turning my confession into gossip. Taehyung admits conflict inside BTS. Who was the member? Is this the end? I left bitterly reading those titles. People love to create villains and heroes out of moments they never witnessed. But what they didn't realize was that this wasn't about drama, it was about growth. About love that needed to be rebuilt. Hype released a statement 2 days later. They called it a creative misunderstanding. I rolled my eyes, but I also understood they had to protect the brand. Still, for the first time, I didn't feel silenced. Because even if the world heard only part of my story, I knew ARMY had felt the truth in my voice. Then something beautiful happened. Fans started sending messages not to choose sides, but to send love to all of us. We just want BTS to be okay. No matter what, we're family too. I cried again reading those words because it reminded me how powerful love can be when it's not about taking sides but about understanding. A week later, we gathered for rehearsal again. It felt awkward at first. Everyone was walking on eggshells. But then Jungkook cracked a joke, Jimin laughed too loud, and suddenly it felt like old times again. We started singing, and when the chorus hit, I looked around and saw all of them smiling. Not the fake kind, but real smiles that come from relief. That's when I knew we were healing, slowly, imperfectly, but truly. After rehearsal, the member I'd confronted walked beside me. He nudged my shoulder lightly and said, "Let's never let it get that bad again." I smiled. Deal. We didn't need an apology anymore. The silence between us had already said everything. Later that night, I wrote in my journal, maybe the real strength of BTS isn't perfection, it's the courage to break and still choose each other again. I fell asleep that night for the first time in weeks without feeling the weight of unspoken words. The city outside kept shining, and for once I felt like I could shine with it, not as a member trying to keep up, but as myself. But I didn't know then that the world wasn't done talking, that my confession had started a conversation far bigger than me, because honesty, once spoken aloud, has a way of echoing farther than you expect. And those echoes were just beginning. When the first headlines appeared that morning, I already knew the storm had arrived. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Every notification sounded like thunder. Taehyung breaks his silence. Is this the end for BTS? Who was the member? I didn't even open half of them. I just sat there on the couch, a cup of cold coffee in my hand, wondering how truth could feel heavier than any lie I'd ever told. Hype called an emergency meeting again. They wanted to align the message. I walked into the room and saw familiar faces, managers, PR, legal advisors. They all looked tired. One of them said softly, "Tai, we know you meant well, but you gave the media a weapon." I didn't argue. Maybe I did. But I also knew that weapon had existed long before my confession, the weapon of silence, the way our emotions were always trimmed to fit the image people wanted to see. I said, I just told them how I felt. I didn't name anyone. I didn't attack anyone. The manager sighed. The problem isn't what you said, it's that you said it at all. That sentence hit me because it meant honesty was a threat. It meant being human was dangerous. I leaned back in the chair and asked quietly, "Then what are we supposed to be?" No one answered. After the meeting, I went straight to the practice room. The others were already there. The air felt thick again, but different this time, less anger, more concern. Jimin walked up first and handed me a bottle of water. "You okay, Tai?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "Trying to be?" Namjoon looked at me from across the room. "They want us to release a group statement," he said, "saying there's no problem, everything's fine. There," I nodded slowly. "We can say that, but let's mean it this time." He gave me that small, knowing smile he always has when he understands something deeper. We will. That day, we practiced longer than usual. It wasn't just choreography. It felt like rebuilding trust through every synchronized move. Every beat, every breath was a reminder that we were still connected. I could feel the unspoken apology in every glance. Sometimes music fixes what words can't. Later that night, after everyone left, I stayed behind again. The studio had become both my safe place and my battlefield. I opened my notebook and began to write lyrics. Not for an album, not for anyone else, just for me. If I speak, the world trembles. If I'm silent, my soul breaks. So let me sing instead. Those lines came out like a whisper, but they felt like freedom. A few days later, the official statement went out. It was polite, neutral, the kind of text written by people who don't want to take sides. But to my surprise, ARMY saw through it. They knew there was more. And instead of fueling drama, they sent messages filled with warmth. We're proud of you for speaking your truth. Take care of your heart, Tai. For the first time, I realized that honesty doesn't always destroy, it can heal too. Then came the press conference. It was supposed to be about our new project, but everyone knew the real reason. Reporters filled the room. As soon as we sat down, microphones pointed toward us like weapons. One journalist asked directly, Taehyung, how are things among the members after your recent statement? The room went still. Cameras clicked. I took a breath, met their eyes, and said, we're human. Sometimes we hurt each other, but we always find our way back. There was silence, then a soft murmur, and another round of flashes. I didn't say anything more. I didn't need to. The truth was simple enough. After the conference, the member I'd confronted came up beside me. That was brave, he said quietly. It was honest, I replied. He nodded. Same thing sometimes. We laughed awkward but real. That laugh felt like sunlight after a long winter. Over the next weeks, things slowly returned to rhythm. We rehearsed, filmed, recorded, yet something in me had changed forever. I no longer wanted to hide behind perfection. I wanted to create from a place of truth, not pressure. One night, while recording vocals alone, I found myself singing differently, softer, freer. The producer stopped the track halfway and looked at me. That sounded raw, he said, but beautiful. Don't lose that. I smiled. Because that's what I had been searching for, not perfection, but authenticity. After the session, I went live again, not to stir things up this time, but to connect. The comments exploded immediately, thousands of armies flooding the chat. I smiled into the camera and said, Hi, it's me again. I just wanted to say thank you for listening, for believing in me, even when I wasn't perfect. Someone wrote, We'll always believe in you, Taehyung. I read it out loud and whispered, That means more than you know. I told them I was okay now, that things between the members were healing. I didn't go into details. I just spoke from my heart. I said, You don't need to know every story to understand love. Sometimes love just means staying, even when it's hard. By the end of the live, I felt lighter than I had in months. It was like the heavy armor I'd been wearing for years had finally fallen off. A few days later, we performed at an award show. Standing on that stage, lights flooding down, fans screaming, I felt something shift inside me. I looked around at the members, each one smiling, exhausted, alive, and I realized we were still here, still together. When the song ended, I turned my mic off for a second and whispered to myself, This is what forgiveness sounds like. After the show, the member who had once confronted me wrapped his arm around my shoulder and said, "You did great, bro." It was simple, but it meant everything. We took a group photo backstage. I looked at the picture later that night, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't look staged. It looked real. The kind of smile that comes from scars that finally stopped bleeding. In the weeks that followed, I noticed something else. Fans stopped asking who the member was. They stopped speculating. Instead, they started talking about healing, communication, and mental health in the industry. Somehow, my pain had turned into a conversation that mattered. I got messages from other idols, two people saying, "Thank you for speaking up. I never expected that." Maybe honesty really does echo farther than fear. There are still days when I think about that confrontation, about how easily pride can ruin something beautiful. But I also think about how forgiveness can rebuild it even stronger. Sometimes I wonder if all of this had to happen, if the cracks were necessary to let the light back in, because now when I stand beside my brothers on stage, I don't just see idols, I see men who have fallen, apologized, and grown. I see a family that fought for each other instead of walking away. That's the real story, not the headlines, not the rumors. Just seven people learning how to stay human in a world that demands perfection. Before going to bed that night, I wrote one more line in my journal. I used to be afraid of confrontation. Now I know it's just another way love learns to speak. And for the first time since that night in the studio, I slept without nightmares. After everything that happened, the confession, the headlines, the tension, and the quiet healing, I realized something simple. Every scar wants to sing. It started one morning when I sat at the piano in my home studio. The sun was still rising, golden light spilling across the keys. I pressed a note soft, trembling, and another, then another. It felt like breathing again after being underwater too long. The melody came from nowhere, but it carried everything I'd been holding inside. The regret, the guilt, the gratitude, the love. I didn't even think about lyrics at first. I just played until the room was full of that sound, fragile but alive. A few hours later, Hyung came in. He listened quietly, leaning against the doorframe. When I stopped, he didn't say anything for a while. Then he smiled faintly and said, "You found it." "Found what?" I asked. "Your truth." We both laughed, but I knew he was right. That day, we started building the song together. I told him I didn't want to hide behind metaphors this time. I wanted to be direct, still poetic, but honest. He said, "Then let's write it like a letter to yourself, to all of us." We wrote for hours. The song grew from a quiet confession into something larger, not just about confrontation or forgiveness, but about what it means to be human in front of millions of people. One of the lines said, "Even when the lights blind me, I'll still reach for your hand in the dark." Yoongi looked at me and nodded. "That's the one," he said. When I recorded the vocals, I didn't try to sound perfect. I let my voice crack. I let it breathe. It wasn't the Taehyung who performed flawless takes for albums. It was just me, the real me. After finishing, I sat in silence for a long time. Headphones still on, heartbeat steady. I felt peace. That's rare for me, peace. That same night, I texted the group chat. "Hyungs, I made something I want you to hear." They all came by the next day, one by one. We played the track in the studio, As the last note faded, there was a long silence. Then Jungkook said softly, "That's beautiful." Namjoon added, "It's not just a song, Tae, it's closure." Hobi-hyung hugged me and whispered, "You've always been brave, but this is different. This is healing." Even the member I'd confronted was there. He looked at me and said quietly, "I'm proud of you." I smiled. "I'm proud of us." That moment felt like the true ending of everything that had started with one argument. The circle had finally closed, not perfectly, but honestly. A few weeks later, we decided to release the song as part of a special project, a collective reflection from all of us. Hybe was hesitant at first, worried it would reopen old rumors, but we insisted. Namjoon told them, "If art isn't brave, it's useless." They couldn't argue with that. Thank you, ARMY, for listening to me with open hearts. I know this story wasn't easy to tell, but your love gave me strength. No matter what happens, I'll keep singing, keep growing, and keep walking with you.